I would love to hand the floor over to Carl.
All right, good to see everyone. Thanks for the opportunity. Thrilled to be here. I'd like to ask you to start by thinking about your mentor. So who taught you product management or build products? Think about that person. Who told you the secrets? Who taught you the secret handshake? And what did they teach you? And then if you're like me and you've been doing this for a while, what do you tell people that you mentor? Or if you're not quite to that stage yet, what do you think you might tell people when you mentor them? And what's the difference between the advice that you got and the advice that you give? So I'd like to start out by telling you my answer to that question and then kind of get into why there's a difference. So the person who got me into product management is named Raghuram, who is currently the COO of VMware. He and I was early at VMware when it was a small private company prior to EMC acquisition and going public and all those fun things that came later when it was a startup. Raghu and I had worked together previously at a company where I was on the engineering side. And the first thing he did for me was he called me over and said, "Carl, you're in the wrong job. We need to get you into product management." And then when he joined running product management at VMware, I joined up there as well. And he taught me a tremendous amount. I have incredible respect for him and thank him, as I hope you do for your mentors. And he told me something, he again pulled me aside, Carl, I'm going to tell you the secret to being a successful product manager. He said, develop relationships with sales engineers. Now, some of you might not work in enterprise software, so you might not know what a sales engineer is, so I will tell you that in B2B sales, technology sales, you have the salesperson, and then you usually have a team of sales people, including a sales engineer, who is sometimes called a sales consultant or pre-sales resource, is somebody who handles the technical part of the sale. So they would do the demos, they will do POCs, they'll kind of match up with the technical buyer, and the sales rep will map to the executive business buyer, whoever it is. They're usually on a plan, they're on a variable plan, so they get commissions, but at a much lower rate than the sales engineer. So the amount that they have at risk, their variable component is lower. So they're a little less salesy than a sales rep, but they are technically in sales. And the point of this is that by talking to such people, as he explained to me, Raghu explained to me, by talking to such folks, you will learn, they'll learn like the reality of what is impressive and what isn't impressive, right? What in fact gets the deal done. In fact, what the competitive objections are at a level, and they see a lot of, they see a lot because they're out on these sales calls, and they will also tell it to you straight because they're not just thinking about their one deal like you might if you were a sales rep. And that was tremendous advice. And I got a lot of good work done at VMware. My big initial thing I'm most proud of, certainly in the early days, was helping to figure out how VMware first got into a client with our hypervisor. And it was identifying the persona of the Windows Server admin who knew Linux. And that was kind of a critical unlocking point for us to understand our path in, because you use a product and you understand Linux, but the problem, the biggest pain was around Windows, so you had both. So that was tremendous. That helped me get in to see those people, learn about that stuff. So as a bit of an aside, I'm going to talk to you about Carl's Law, which is that if you're in product management, you need to spend more time thinking about personas than you do. Even when you plan your day, you take Carl's Law into account. So you're not spending enough time thinking about personas is the side point there. So that works for me. Okay, back to the main thread. This advice that Raghu gave me is not the advice that I give to people that work for me today. The advice I give to them is develop relationships with CSMs. customer success managers. Now, some of you might not know what a CSM is. I'm going to come back to that again. If you're not working in enterprise software, you might not know that, and I'll explain that later. But it's a different advice, and it's not because Raghu's advice was wrong. It's because the world is different. So I'd like to sort of walk through some of what is different about the world and why this advice is different, and then I'll get in a little bit more detail about what this advice really means and kind of what's behind it. Good? Good? Let's do it. All right. I love it. Okay. Okay. So know your business model. So another thing I believe strongly is that you cannot be a good product manager if you can't hold a conversation with your CFO. I would ask you to even think about that in recruiting. If you don't understand your business model, you don't know what you're building for. So I want to just talk a little bit about software business model. Okay? I hope some of this may be so obvious to everyone. If so, a little refresher to remind you. And if you don't know this stuff, then you're not ready to work in enterprise. Again, I only know enterprise, by the way, just so you know. All those consumer folks around here, I know nothing. About enterprise business, I understand. Okay, traditional enterprise software model, perpetual license, you buy it, you own it, plus 20% support and maintenance. We used to call it support and subscription, S&S. And that is the money that you make. So you buy it, you own it. And in this model, the customer takes all the risk. You buy it, you don't like it, too bad, I already have your money. And even the variable component of 20%, if you're an enterprise and you're not getting support on something and you're not getting security patches on it, then you essentially have to write the whole thing off. So you're incredibly locked in. The customer takes all the risk. It is super vendor friendly. It is also super cash efficient. It is super cash efficient because you sell, you get all the money up front. Quotas in this world can be between $2 and $5 million. So you hire sales reps, they sell, even in the ballpark of their quota, you're throwing off cash, which you can use to hire more sales reps, which then you can sell more, and then your customers are paying you money whose cash you're using to hire more field people to then sell more, and you grow without using capital. Use the capital to build the product in the first place, but you don't have to build capital to build the growth. Use capital to build the growth. Tremendously cash efficient, and of course, at least your sort of traditional on-premise model, insane gross margins. Like, I don't know if anybody here has shipped product on floppy disks besides me. Shipped a lot of products on CDs. And then we had to spring for DVDs after that. It was really, our cogs went crazy at that. I mean, this is like the greatest, this is why does Oracle have those towers? Why does Microsoft own the world? Why is SAP so rich? This is like gotta be the greatest business model if you could ever do it, right? Fantastic business model. Now, there's always some challenges in any model. And I'm going to point out one, which is, hey, you can grow really fast. You can also stop growing really fast. Because the minute you stop, every year, if I sell you $100 million worth of software, the next year I got to sell $100 million worth of software just to stay flat. So growth immediately can tip down, especially from a high growth world. And so you really have to pay attention. Make sure you don't stall in your sales. So as a product manager then, when I work in this world, as I used to, as I work in this world, you have to keep with certain things. You got to understand the buyer really well. You don't want to lose momentum on the sale. You got to make sure that you are right on top of competition, because if something comes and that sales momentum slows down even for a minute, your business will be negatively impacted, and obviously same with the market overall. Okay, so you see, this pretty good advice then that Raghu gave me in this world, which is pay attention to the market, understand the customer, the buyer and buying situation, and great, how do I enter, who's the key people, how do I get there? This I have to focus on, and this is what we do. But this is not the kind of business we run anymore, unfortunately. Today we work in the SaaS model in enterprise software. Software as a service, subscription, annual, or monthly recurring contracts. I always work in annual contracts. Monthly, I would go crazy. I know, again, some of you go like, hey, some of you work on probably much shorter subscription contracts than that. But in the enterprise world, it's a huge difference to even go to an annual contract from this perpetual license. Tremendously different. And if you're going to work in this, all you got to understand this stuff. So vendor takes the risk. The sales cost is about the same to sell a SaaS product than a traditionally licensed product, but you only get a little bit of it. You get maybe 1 year's worth of cash up front. Okay, so it is very common you lose money on every customer. It costs you more to get that customer than they pay you in cash up front. So you have a tremendous risk. If they then leave, you just lost money. Okay? So extremely risky from a vendor perspective. And it is very capital intensive to grow because unlike before where you sell, you generate cash, you can hire more salespeople. Here, the more you sell, the more cash you have to outlay. I sell, even in a reasonably good situation, I make back what it costs me to sell. If I want to sell more, I got to somehow come up with more cash. I didn't generate any cash from those previous customers, so I have to dip into my capital. So you end up in a situation with this type of business where you're burning capital for growth. In fact, if you're really into this, the worst thing that can happen for you is that you start making money because that means you're not growing fast. I mean, not the worst thing that can happen to you, but anyway, look at Salesforce today, they are cash flow positive at Salesforce, the world's largest SaaS company, but they are still not made a GAAP profit. So you get back to revenue side, we can be a big accounting story here. If you're on the other thing you have to know, if you're on the enterprise, traditional enterprise business, you understand revenue recognition, because when you get that cash up front, you need to recognize that revenue right away, otherwise it doesn't show up on your financials, and you have to deal with that pesky support and maintenance part, which has to be ratably recognized. You don't want to intermix those. So you get, oh boy, my day one as an enterprise software product manager is like, let me talk to you about revenue recognition. I'm like, whoa. But again, you don't understand revenue recognition, you can get in trouble. Okay, here, there's no hope, you can't recognize the revenue, so even if your cash flow, because it's subscription, even if it's cash flow positive, like on a GAAP basis, Salesforce has still not made a dime. And that's to their credit because it means they're still growing fast. That make sense? You getting the kind of notion? And then, and you got to know this if you're in this business. Okay, and the gross margins are not so great. Usually if it's at least a SaaS world because you actually have to pay to run the service. So from like 90% gross margin or some crazy high gross margin in the old world to, if you can get over 90% gross margin, if you can get 80% gross margin in this world, you're doing really well. And a lot of people do 40%, although that you need to do better if you're 40% gross margin. Okay, so now I'm going to give you the breeze through course. You thought, I'm going to a finance lecture? I'm telling you, you got it, okay, you know this. I'm going to do a breathe through course on SaaS, on SaaS metrics. Okay, can't run a, we know some folks here know these SaaS metrics really well, but you got to know them. So the key SaaS metrics are CAC and LTV. CAC is the cost to acquire a customer. Very sensitive, the cost to acquire a customer. Okay, your sales and marketing cost divided by the number of new customers. Okay, so it's how much do you have to pay to get one customer? It's a very sensitive business. And then the LTV is the lifetime value. How much do you make back from each client that you sell over time? Now, this is pretty trivial stuff in the world of traditional, enterprise software is not that interesting. The money you make back is the money they pay you up front. But in this case, the money they make back, it depends on how long they stay with you. Right? So the simple LTV is your average ARR, how much you get per client per year, divided by your churn rate. Because 1 over the churn rate is how long on average a customer stays with you. Okay, so that's simple LTV. If you want to do a little better, you multiply by gross margins. Basically, how much gross profit do you make per year on each customer times how long they're on average stay with you before they leave. And that's how much money you make. If you want to be really careful, you'd also do a discount because money in 3 years is not as valuable as money today. But most people don't put that calculation in. It's simpler this, okay? So those are the basic metrics. And then here's what you have to optimize as a product manager, are the business health metrics. The CAC to LTV ratio. So basically that's as simple as, given you have to spend a dollar to acquire a customer, how much do you get back over time, right? That's what that's saying. How much you make, how much does it cost you to get a customer, and how much is that customer worth? So your job as a product, I mean, for anybody who's running a SaaS business, is you've got to make CAC to LTV better. If you can't make CAC to LTV good, eventually your business will suck. Right? Because you're basically, if it was 1, you'll never make a dime, right? Over time, right? You look good, you acquire a customer, but then you lose it immediately. And then the CAC payback is basically how long do you have to hold on to a customer to pay back your initial sales cost. So a reasonable good rule of thumb is if you can get 1 year, costs you $100 to get a customer and you get $100 in the first year, you're sort of okay. Ideally, you can make a little money on that first year, or the worst case, it takes you 2 years to even make back what it cost you in the first place. Okay, so the short answer to this, we could spend a whole long time talking about these metrics, but again, if you're in this business, you should know them, yes.
So the churn rate, if you lose 10% of your customers, is the churn rate 0.1 or 0.9?
Churn rate, if you have 90% retention, you have 10% churn, so churn rate is 0.1, so 1 over churn. So if I have 10% churn, that means on average each customer lasts 10 years. Does that make sense? Annual churn. I'm doing everything annually. I'm doing everything annual. Some people like to do this in months. I'm doing everything annual here. So 1 over churn. You can sum the geometric series basically. You get 0.9 plus 0.9 squared plus 0.9 cubed and so on. It's 1 over 0.1 is the.
So as a product manager, I look at this equation of CAC colon LTV ratio.
Yep.
And let's say if I'm losing LTV value.
Yep.
So as a product manager, should I be looking at increasing the ARR value to save the company, or how do I?
Yeah. Hold on just one sec. Let's come to this. Exactly. You could go either way. It kind of depends on where you are. The short answer is it depends a little bit on where your churn rate is, and also your cash needs. If you're really well funded, you have to worry a little less about the CAC, and you can focus on making the CAC to LTV good through improving LTV.
Yeah,
If you don't have enough cash, you're going to have to grow through CAC improvement. Yeah.
I agree with the ratio for CAC, but as a PM, you are usually lucky if you have visibility into the sales and marketing expenses, much less even control over it. So really you're trying to see, okay, yes, how many new customers am I adding?
Yes, how many? So if you didn't hear, the comment was, hey, I don't necessarily know this or certainly have control over that. Let me hold on that. I mean, first of all, you should know. I mean, if there's public company and you got to get some details, a little more challenging, but you got to have a sense of this if you're running a SaaS business. I would say demand to know because this is what the business is. I'm going to come to a sort of some of the things to think about as ways to try to affect these, because that's kind of what I'm going to try to get at a little bit here is how do we actually try to, as a product team, impact that a little bit, have some directions. Okay, so just to kind of come back to this, this thing in running a subscription business, the first thing to know is that churn sucks, like really sucks. And this is using simple LTV where I'm not looking at gross margin, so it's not quite this bad. If you have a really bad gross margin, then it's you have other problems. But the difference between 10% churn and 20% churn is like your product being worth half as much, right? So because in a simple basis, right? So it's the difference between an average customer stays with you 10 years, paying you $100 a year. 20% churn means the average customer stays with you 5 years. So you're going to get the same, again, it's simple calculation, there's margin and there's time of value money, but it's like insane amount of money, insane over time. Now we don't see it day one because you're like, hey, I got all these customers. You don't know ahead of time how long they're going to stick with you. But if you start seeing this over time, you're in just huge trouble if that. And if you think about it as a product manager then, you might think, I am the greatest product manager ever. I made my product, 1.3 times as valuable as it was before. And would that do more for your business than doing something that's going to change the churn rate from 20% to 10%? Over time, you're going to do better with that, affecting the churn rate. So the moral of the one simple story is like you pay the freak attention to what's causing attrition in your business because, especially now, to be clear, when you got high 90s, I mean, in enterprise business, high 90s is insanely good. Workday, whatever, people like that can achieve that sort of thing. Generally speaking, if you're below about 75% retention is about as low as you could possibly go and make a business. You assume your CAC is really good. 80%, 85%, those are pretty good businesses. About 90% is an excellent business. Into the 90s, you're a very excellent business. High 90s, you're truly world-class in terms of typical SaaS retention, just to kind of give you a sense of this. Okay, so what does this imply then for product management? Just a few points, and then I'll give you more kind of my own tips and tricks kind of thing as we go along. But just kind of conceptually, what does this imply for product management? Well, first of all, figure out what's causing churn, if there's churn, what you can do to reduce churn. I mean, it's absolutely imperative in a SaaS business. You cannot survive as a SaaS business with a high churn rate. You cannot survive. As an enterprise SaaS anyway. I mean, unless you have zero cost of sale kind of thing. And salespeople make a lot of money. So it's hard to have, if you need a salesperson, you're not going to get there. So focus on churn. The other thing to focus on is reducing the cost of sale relative to price. And so that is, but we were talking about before, you can affect that either way. You can reduce the cost of sale, you can increase the price. I think we often think in terms of increasing, hey, I increase value, I increase price, I'm going to do something to increase the price of my product. So that's all normal stuff, you should do it. When it thinks about reducing the cost of sale, I mean, there can be very situational. If you understand, it's a good kind of thing. Do ride-alongs, go talk, work with your sales team, understand what the cost of sales, marketing, what is it, brand, whatever it is. But there's some general techniques for reducing the cost of sale. The first general technique is it's very, very expensive to acquire a customer. It's much less expensive to sell them more. So you can get to really improve your cost of sale. You can develop, make sure that you have upsell opportunities, and that you have customers who not only want to stay with you, they want more. They're hungry for more. That's one of the best ways to reduce your cost of sale. The other way to get cheap sales is to have your customers sell for you. So referrals, references, advocacy, tremendous way to reduce your cost of sale because you're getting sort of the free labor of your customers in your sales process. So as a product manager, you need to focus on, they all line up together. I need my customers to stay with me. I need my customers to buy more. I need my customers to say good things about me and refer their friends. Okay, and those things, yes, and I want to make my product more valuable so I can charge more for it. Okay, but those things are really fundamental. And then I'm going to spend a lot of time on it. The other thing you got to watch out for is gross margin. So you have to pay attention as a product manager. I mean, a new feature, but it's going to cost us so much to run this back end or whatever it is that we're going to, it's going to kill my LTV through essentially my margin. But I'm not going to talk too much about that, but pay attention. Okay? Okay. So that's good. All of this is great. And now, if you are paying attention, which you are, I hope you have the following question. If the traditional enterprise model is so great, and you have so much power as a vendor, and the customer takes all the risk, and the SaaS model is just a pain in the ass, why does everybody build SaaS companies? Why do it? Don't do it. It's so hard. Go back to the old way. It made people billionaires. We've got them all over the place. You want to be Larry Ellison. You want the traditional model. Yes? Lower barrier to entry. Nailed it. You lower barrier to entry. The fact of the matter is customers have too many choices. So Jeffrey Moore, you all know, famous guy in Silicon Valley, and he said it. He says, look, I'm sorry, guys. Product is no longer king. It's too many choices. It's too easy to build products today. Because we talk a lot about the cost of sale, which is about the whole dynamics of the business. But to start up, of course, you need capital to actually build the product. And it's too easy to build products today. You don't need to go out and buy a lot of infrastructure to build a product. You can use open source as a way to get started. Run it on the cloud, open source. If you do this, boom, boom, you have a competitor. So plus all the other kind of reasons why customers have advantage. They have information advantages. They know things about you that they didn't used to know about you. They communicate with each other. You can't keep bad news. So there's a fundamental reason why you have to build a SaaS company today, not a traditional enterprise company today, is because the customers won't stand for it. The customers have the power. Sorry, too bad. You have to deal with that. And so that has this whole implication. And I like the way Jeff talks about it, because he's saying like that what you need, having the better product is not the more important thing, because it's too easy to that's not a sustainable competitive advantage. Strong customer relationships is the competitive advantage. Okay, strong customer relationships is the competitive advantage. So, so that's again what we have to think about when we're building our businesses, and therefore when we're building our products, is maintaining those strong customer relationships. Okay, so I'm going to get a little more specific. That's kind of the context. That's what's different. That's kind of broadly speaking. I'm in the SaaS business. Raghu was in the traditional business. He gives me one advice. I give different advice. Okay, so let's now. What is this advice I'm giving you? I give to people that I work with, that I teach. And that is talk to customer success managers. Okay, so what is that? So customer success is what SaaS companies do, the sort of activities that SaaS companies do to deal with the fact that they hold this risk. Remember, I said they hold the risk, right? I'm risky. I sold this to you, but I haven't given the risk to you. I've sold this to you and I am still at risk. So I had better do some things to mitigate that risk for me. Which fundamentally is, I better make sure this works out. If it ain't working out, it's not so much a problem for you, it's a problem for me. So I have to make sure you, customer, are successful. And we talk about that what does it mean to be successful? It's you have to have the right experience and you have to have the outcomes, the experience you want, the outcomes you need. Okay, and so we do a set of activities as a business to focus on that. Give you a very simple way to think about this. In the enterprise software days and the traditional enterprise, legacy enterprise software days, the best thing you could ever do in the world is sell shelfware. Because they paid you for it, you have their money, and they never call support, so there's no cost for that, so it's brilliant. And they might forget about it and you go back and sell it to them again, it's terrific. But you know, shelfware is a disaster in the SaaS world, because then they'll be like, hey, I'm not using this, forget it. I'm not renewing, and then you lose money. And all that work to acquire the customer is gone. And plus they were probably plus they'll tell their friends, oh yeah, we didn't work out, that we tried that, it wasn't any good. So then your cost of sales now goes up. So you have to invest, and all SaaS companies do this, and subscription companies do this, you have to invest in activities as a business that drive those outcomes for your customer over and above just giving them access to your product. And in that world, so that's overall customer success. And by the way, this is at my company Gainsight, we literally wrote the book on customer success. That's what we do. We help clients with customer success. Our platform is the platform for helping SaaS companies and other subscription and recurring revenue businesses achieve outcomes and good outcomes and experiences for their customers. So that's our business. But the basic principle here is you have to do this if you're a subscription business, and it affects every role, right? If I'm a customer-facing role, I can't fail to focus towards outcomes for my customers. But there's a sort of a special role called customer success manager, whose full job is focusing on this with customers. They meet up they pay attention to adoption. They try to drive more adoption. They have meet with the executives, try to drive strategic initiatives using the product or solution, advise on how to use it most effectively, so on and so forth. So that's a position that's actually one of the fastest growing job categories in the world. Actually, I think it's #1 in Australia. Interestingly, LinkedIn tells us #3 US. I mean, it's like a huge exploding thing because everybody's going to subscription model, and so customer success affects everybody, but customer success managers is a special job that focuses on that. At the risk of being a little geeky here, that's allowed, I'll tell you the way I think about this, which is you can think about a job as being sort of oriented around a certain data model. So for example, a support person is oriented around the case's data model. They look after the case. And a project or a professional services person looks after the project. Okay, all of these things tie into a customer. The thing that a product manager looks after a feature or a product, right? Those are the sort of objects that are core to what our job is. The core object for a customer success manager is the customer. And that's why it's so obvious you need this role, because you're saying the most important thing is outcomes for my customer. Well, who in your company's primary thing is the customer? And in most cases, nobody. I mean, without this, there's nobody. You're like, no, I look after cases. Well, that's one aspect of it. I look after their projects. That's one aspect of it. I look after their invoices. That's another aspect, which is a relevant one. So that's what CSMs are about. Okay, so these, if you're in a SaaS company, you will find these teams. I was at a client in Sunnyvale today, 300 people on their CSM. It's actually not even a SaaS company. It's moving to a SaaS. These are large teams, actually, in a lot of companies. But again, it's much, okay, that's what we do. And then this is OpenView is an investor and analyst company, and they sort of identified the fact that customer success teams, customer success managers spend tons and tons and tons of time with clients, and product managers don't. And that's a big problem, because how is it that we are going to ensure that we have low churn, ensure that we have high upsells, ensure that we have good advocacy if we're not understanding and engaging with our customers? But customer success managers spend all their time with customers. They are doing executive business reviews and calling up and having meetings. And I mean, it depends a little bit on the size of the customers. They might be one for just one customer if it's a big enough customer. So they understand those customers really well. So the advice that I give, as I sort of circling back before, was these are the folks who understand the customer, not in the context of a prospect, but in the context of an actual living, breathing customer who's going to have to renew or advocate and so on. So these are the folks who can walk you in and teach you. The unfortunate thing is that according to this study, not that many people are actually taking advantage. So let me talk about some of the ways that the CSM team can help you out. One of them is back to this notion of personas. So you've got to understand your personas. Now, one of the things I know a lot of probably folks who in B2C world, they spend a lot of time on personas. Personas in B2B world are very subtle and complex because you have many different roles. And you have to kind of get through those roles. So you have users, but you'll also probably have an admin in most cases. A very different set of folks. And then there is very likely an executive or other decision maker who's critical to your renewal and probably never goes to your product at all. They never even use it. So as a product person, you're like, the person who's going to decide on the future of my business, going to weigh judgment as to whether my product is worth renewing, doesn't even use it. So how am I going to understand what's important to that person? Not just in the sales context, but in the renewal and upsell context. And that's going to be the CSM who helps you with that. And you got to understand all these personas. I kind of dug into that. So CSMs can help you with personas. CSM can help you around this notion of advocacy. CSMs are often incented, even paid, get bonus based on advocacy that their clients do. I mean, there are different ways to define that. There's a notion we've defined of the CSQL, the Customer Success Qualified Lead. They generate opportunities generally through advocacy activities on the behalf of their customers. So what is it that leads to that advocacy? Yes? Customer Success Qualified Lead. It's obviously MQL, Marketing Qualified Lead. So marketing gets paid based on leads they generate. Customer success teams generate leads too. In fact, they lead really, really very well qualified leads because they go in here and say, you know what these guys really need? They really need our other product. Or, you know, I just talked to this person and I asked them, do you have anybody, do you have any, oh, I heard that you were at some event. Did you pitch, did you tell people how great our product is or whatever, right? And they'll push that to the point, yeah, I was talking to so-and-so and they or whatever, right? Or I developed a relationship with this person and then they moved to another company and great. And based on that relationship, we'll be able to get, the admin over there now is an advocate for us or whatever. So understanding the nature of advocacy, it's kind of interesting. Of course, we know this. The features that sell aren't always the features that people value the most afterwards. And both are important, by the way. Nothing that I say should say you don't have to worry about what things demo well and sell well. I mean, that's a given. But you have to understand what are the things that are driving value and driving advocacy later. Okay, we got that. This is a program that I run at Gainsight within our product organization, and it's super successful, and I would encourage everybody to run a program like this. So what happens, at least in more complex enterprise software, is that you can have a product and you go to start using the product and then something prevents value. Something about the product kind of blocks the customer. Oh, it's not compatible with the blah blah that we have. We're stuck. I didn't realize. oh, but you know, we have to have this thing work this way, and if because of something about where our process is, and it would be a huge undertaking for us to change it, and so could you please just make this little tweak to your product? And as product managers, that's the kind of thing we can sort of find annoying. You're like, oh, come on, like really? It's gonna make that big a difference if I do this one thing or whatever? But sometimes it does. And if there's something about the product that's preventing the customer from getting value, it's a huge problem. Because then they're, you know, even if you say, oh, fine, go re-engineer your process, they're like, okay, by the time I do that, their contract's up and I might as well go somewhere else. So the program that we run is that the customer success managers or service delivery leads have the opportunity to essentially file a risk against the product. We actually use our product to manage this. It happens, but one way or another. You actually file a risk against the product team and say, this client is stuck. They're not going to be successful unless this feature or change to the product is made available, and we need it on an expedited basis. Now, it's not automatic. We don't just be like, okay, great, fine, we'll do that for sure. But we commit to engaging on that, and whenever possible, making it happen, if it's true, that this really is needed, and then be very active back with the customer. Okay, we're running out of time, so we're gonna almost done here. So we run the product risk program. Super important. So many clients would have churn, but for this type of program, and by the way, it's actually, if it's that important a thing that they're like, I'm not going to be successful without it, you kind of want to know that anyway, right? Because likely their other clients could face the same thing. We've had good ideas. Now some things are more general, not just around with CSMs. I think everybody probably knows these, but you need to take the opportunity to learn about your clients through instrumenting your product. These are digital products now. We can learn about clients through the users and others through the product. We can engage them directly. We actually have the greatest real estate for customer engagement of anybody in the company, because we own the product that they use. So we got to take advantage of that and actually do our part to have a delightful experience and drive them towards outcomes, drive adoption, and so on and so forth. I think that it's obvious, but it's something we shouldn't miss. Two more for me, so we're almost done here. Two more suggestions for me. One is I am a big believer in online community, and because again, remember, we need to understand and engage with our customers, and we need to be personally responsible for driving their experience as well. Now, most online communities are of two types. There are two main types of online communities that businesses run. The most common is they're run by support. And they're run by support under the model of case deflection. So basically, hey, someone's going to file a case, send them to our community and ask the question there, and then maybe one of our other customers will answer it instead of us, and then we'll save money on support. And hopefully then we'll give them a badge, and then they'll be happy and everything will be fine. That's sort of, which is fine. I'm not against that. That's a great thing, and case deflection is a real thing, and it helps your gross margin, so that's really good. But that's the most common type of online community, is actually funded and run by support. And the other third or so of online communities, B2B online communities, run by marketing. They're about, okay, we want to engage and brand building and get people kind of in our community and stuff like that. So that's another thing. In our case, we in the product team own the online community. And the vast majority of the time, we and the product team are the ones who are engaging directly with our customers through that community. And we get bazillions of feature requests through that. Way more than we could possibly actually do. So you have to be prepared for that and just be like, great idea, probably can't do it right away, but I really appreciate the inputs, and engage and ask questions and be present and help provide that experience for your customers, and you learn quickly what they need. So anyway, I encourage everybody to do this. It's uncomfortable at first, but I think it is the commitment of the product team to engage directly with their customers. In our case, mostly admins, but depending who you are. And the last one that I'll strongly suggest is share your roadmap. Again, a little uncomfortable to do at first, because we're all like, well, things might change. I don't really want to share my roadmap. But now I'm going to be clear about this. I'm not necessarily saying that you share your roadmap publicly. That's a different question. I don't usually do that, at least in detail. I think that's I don't usually do that. But for your existing customers, what I do is every quarter I have a 90-minute webinar, customers only, and I share our near, medium, and long-term roadmap and what's changed and updated on it. I do that personally. And it's one of my favorite things that I do on a quarterly basis. And it is, again, a way of encouraging our clients to stay with us because they see the future value and benefit through sharing of the roadmap. And again, it's my small part, or not so small in some cases, part of directly providing the experience and the positive feeling for our customers so that we are going to contribute to those key metrics for the business that we need. So just to sum that up, my specific suggestions to you are engage with your CSM. In order to engage the CSM for the reasons of understanding personas, understanding what drives advocacy, it didn't talk about specifically, but obviously understanding what is truly valuable, and then uncovering those product risks, those specific things that are preventing value for your customers. And then in addition, I strongly suggest that you instrument your product both to listen to what, look and see what people are actually doing and then communicate to them through your product, own your community, and share your roadmap. So those are some of the specific things that I would suggest to you if you're working in a subscription business, and I'm ready for any questions.
All right. Can we get Carl a round of applause, please?
Thank you.
Having spent 5 years in a B2B business, I can say that it's painfully accurate if you don't get a handle on churn and steadily increase the value that you get from each customer. It's a grind. It really grinds on you. So thanks for sharing those insights, Carl.
Totally.
Hi, I'm Ritu.
Hello.
Thanks for the great presentation.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
I'd like to know more about, you mentioned you have the product risk program. So does that, how do you combat feature bloat, which is kind of the legacy applications, the on-prem?
Yeah.
They had that issue where, one customer requested a feature and that ended up being shipped to everyone versus the product being scaled across.
I'm glad you asked that question. And you're absolutely right. In a previous company, I knew we were in trouble when we would put things in the code that said, if customer equals X, then do this, otherwise don't. And you're like, that's actually going the wrong way. Or like, why do you have this feature? I don't recommend you use it. You're in trouble at that point. And that comes, in that case, it came because of sales pressure. So you're like, if we commit to this thing, then this customer's gonna buy. And you're like, but that's a bad idea. Then you're in trouble. So it's a great question. You gotta make sure that you don't screw up your product like that. I will say two comments specifically on how this works. First of all, I'm much more comfortable taking those specific product asks from existing customers than I am from prospects. Because what you find in the prospect case, at least this has been my history, is that they have some image about, but what's important to me is this. And you're like, dude, I do this a lot. I look at a lot of customers, believe me, that's not the way to do it. But they're hung on that and you're having this money thing. So you're like, I'm going to agree to do some wrong thing because that person is just confused. Once they're in and using your product and they're honestly trying to use it and they're putting the thing and they hit a wall, then I feel a lot more sympathy to that. I'm like, okay, they're actually here. There's a legitimate situation. It's not theoretical. So that's one. The second one is, this is where, I'll say three. The second one is, this is where you got to get on the phone with the client. Because if they often, of course, like all feature requests, they're gonna offer you up, they're gonna ask for a solution. Right? And you can't just give them the solution. You've got to dig down to the problem and you got to say, okay, what is really going on here? And then it's a clean negotiation. Would it be sufficient if X? Because usually there's a very concrete thing. We cannot go live. We cannot bring this new team on. We cannot do some specific thing. Okay, if I get this amount, if I can do this, is that enough to get you across? And so you have that very concrete thing with a concrete outcome that isn't just, somebody's hobby horse. And the third one is you can say no. I don't commit that we're going to do this. I don't say, if you CSM or services lead say this, therefore we're going to do it. If it's off in the wrong direction for us, it's not the kind of thing we want to do, we won't. In what I find, at least when I've worked on this, which has been for quite a few years, what I find is that, in fact, most of the time it turns out to be right. There are some outliers and you say no, and you got to be willing to say no as product manager. Obviously, we know that. That's part of the interview. Tell me a time you said no to a client in their face. You have to be able to do that, but generally speaking, these are good ideas, I find. Or there are things that are, oh yes, I want to do that, but that's later in the roadmap, but no, pull it in. Or they're small things. And quite a few times we've had really things that turn out to be strong competitive advantage because they came through that mechanism, because they're really real at that point because the clients are using them. So great question, and those are at least some partial answers to them. Okay, we were going to do one over there, and then we'll come here. Okay.
And obviously a different setup than
Yep.
you are with SaaS, but I'm wondering, do you have any perspective in terms of should your product managers be going direct to customers rather than going through a CSM, or do you see an opportunity where they should be going direct to customers?
I think you should go direct to customers whenever you can. I mean, I like to go direct to customers. That's why I suggest things like community and things like that, because that's a way to actually actually get brand name. I want my customers to know my product managers' names. I think that they should, and they should get on the call a lot. Now, there's a sort of, just as you would with salespeople, there's courtesy in this. If you're going to give bad news to a client, you need to bring the customer success manager in with you. You know, you don't work around them. So you have courtesy that you work through those folks whose job is related to that specific customer. For you, it's like, okay, I'm not going to do this feature thing, and it's the right thing for 95% of our customers. This customer is probably going to churn, and then you know, that CSM person's going to lose a bonus or something. So you got to bring them in and be part of it. Since you mentioned survey, I'm going to just come off of that another direction. Another thing I almost put up here, but just kept keeping it short, but I'll say NPS or other kind of survey response is something that product teams should focus on. Again, maybe that's obvious in the B2C world, but in the B2B world, we often have other folks like CSMs who are held accountable for things like an NPS score. I think, you know, in my business, I own the end user and admin NPS numbers. The CSM owns the executive NPS number. So again, NPS is more complex in a B2B world since they're different personas. Okay, that was a little bit a question you didn't ask, but for what it's worth. Yes.
Pricing.
Pricing.
Your product is worth $100.
Yeah.
What do you typically do for the first month or to get the customer in to check out the product?
Carl, can you just repeat?
Yeah, the question was about pricing. If the product's worth $100, what do you do for the first month to get them in? Are you talking about how do you think about the subscription price is like what fraction of the overall, or subscription is $100?
$100. Typically, if you think about Dropbox and Box and
Right.
everybody,
yeah.
and Spotify, first month free,
First month free, yeah,
blah,
for
blah,
sure.
blah. How do you think about that entry point?
Entry point, okay, yeah. So the question is, how do I think about entry point, like, for example, trial or freemium or these kind of models leading up to a subscription? To me, that's all about cost of sale. So the question is, what is your sales model that you have to develop? And if you can have a sales model in which you don't need salespeople very much or at all, hallelujah, you've just made it much cheaper sale. So if we can bring the product up sooner in the sales process, then usually we do better if it works. So yes, absolutely. So the most efficient kind of B2B businesses are ones where it's pure lead gen leading to a trial and then into a paid thing. So I would say do that when it works. Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. But yes, the more you can pull into your product, the better, because it's cheaper to do that. So that's my suggestion. Yep.
Thank you for the talk.
Sure thing.
Good.
Thanks.
I've been in enterprise as well for a really long time.
Okay.
I recognize VMware because I was at Sun when you were at VMware.
There you go.
Before you
Excellent.
dropped that.
Same kind of thing. Yeah, exactly.
So I'm trying to make the transition to software as a service.
Okay.
So my question is around communities.
Yes.
Can you share any resources around building online communities or best practices, or kind of, you know, what's the Bible for building a good community?
Yeah. Oh, that's an excellent question. So, I used to work at Jive Software, so we actually build communities. So I kind of learned a lot there. They don't run that business anymore. Lithium is kind of a market leader right now, and I think they do have Lithium is which bought that part of Jive's business. They have a lot of good, you know, they're kind of a thought leader in this space, and I would say refer to some of the work that they do. I would look at some good communities that exist out on like good B2B communities. Actually, the VMware community has always been really good. The Eloqua community is one I've been very impressed by. So I think those are some examples, although those are more support and marketing driven a little bit more. That's a good question. What other kind of resources for community? I would say, let's follow up and let me reflect on that a little bit. I know a lot because I worked in that business, and so I don't actually have a lot of easy references for you, but I will say, I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it. And we can follow up online, and I'll come up with some specifics there. Yeah.
Can I ask you regarding these communities, how many minutes or hours you spend per week in communities?
Yes.
Answering the questions and basically.
The question was, yeah, how much time do we spend in the community? A typical product manager will spend in my team 4 hours a week, maybe, on the community, something like that. I personally am kind of up and down on it, but I'm number 10 on the community on the leaderboard, or 11. Darn it, I'm going to have to get rid of someone. So I personally answer a question on the community a lot, and engage with customers. It's a number of hours a week. It is the single most common email I send to my team is, hey, don't forget, everybody in the community, spend some time right now, schedule a meeting with yourself, go on community, engage with the clients, engage with the customers. One thing I will just mention, almost all of my team is in India. Our engineering staff, and not all, but the majority of the product managers are also in India. We get a double benefit from the community because it's asynchronous. Everybody's multiple nights a week on calls with clients. Most of our clients are in North America, some Europe. So they're on late calls, but this is something you can do time zone shifted, so it's helpful that way. But yeah, it's a multi-hour per person per week commitment is my expectation of that. And we have also one person who's a full-time community manager, but junior resource, yeah.
Just a comment on
Please,
community.
yes.
What we are looking to do and what we are seeing is that it's very easy to just create yourself a Slack channel.
Yep.
Just add other communities there. Everyone has access to it.
Yeah.
So you don't have to create a separate
Yep.
community like Jive.
Oh yeah, very interesting. We're experimenting with that too. We have a community that's based on Get Satisfaction. It's owned by Sprinkler. It's a very kind of inexpensive tool. We're moving to another platform, but we've actually introduced a Slack channel as a trial basis for our clients as well, which is I'll tell you my experience with it. Maybe you can comment as well. Again, it was on the experiment. We've been running it for about the last 90 days. The Slack is it's far better at getting customers to talk to each other than a traditional forum-based community in my experience. I'm actually amazed at how much clients actually engage with each other via Slack. A little less good at getting as you might expect, the kind of thoughtful, here's my use case, I'm explain why I need this, and go through the whole rigmarole with follow-up and tracking and all that stuff. The history is not great. But what I want to do is to get customers talking to each other more, and Slack has proved to be really powerful for that, so we'll figure out how to blend that in. I do think there's a lot of good stuff in there. Yeah, Jason.
Just a question on the risk program.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
When you get that feedback back, do you prioritize that more highly than other things you're working on, or is it just kind of go into the big list of priorities?
We prioritize it with greater urgency. Yes, we do, So yeah, let me talk through the product risk program a little bit more. So interested in that. So yeah, so the way that we operate is they come in at any time, and again, we happen to use our own product for this. So people raise a call to action against us, but whatever. So we get this. It's a fixed thing, and then we have one of the senior members, actually a VP level person on my team, owns that, and that's the first point of contact. And so if the thing, it's like a form, it's have to fill out all what will happen if we don't do it, what's the date, we put a onus on the person. We really have to just be like throw up, hey, this guy's unhappy, we don't do this, but no, you have to like fill out this thing, like commit to this. And that person, if they don't understand, it's not clear, she follows up with the person filing the risk to fully understand it. She runs a weekly meeting. We do this more consistently than any other meeting we have as a team. Every week, we review every open product risk and write a note about the status and communicate that out. But the general practice is then first thing you do is make sure you understand. If you don't understand fully, you get on the call with a client. Then you sort of work to formulate an answer or a proposed solution. So work with engineering, duplicate a proposed solution. Go back to the client and sort of, okay, this is what we think. Is this going to work? Negotiate. And once you lock it in, you commit a date. Now that date is hopefully as far out as you can. So we've had product risks that have been open for close to a year because that's just we're not able to do it sooner. we have a target. The person who runs the program for me has a target of, it's a basically 90-day target. So, and again, we're a big product, so 90 days is a pretty decent turnaround for us on those things. So most of them should be done in 90 days. It's our target if we accept them. So yes, that absolutely, and engineering kind of comes in, well, all these product risks, we have to hold a high bar because it does disrupt other things. Yeah.
What impact do you think that this product risk communication to the customer has on your churn rate? Do you think that it improves it by 5%, 10%?
It's
You're telling them, we'll take care of you, but it may be a year or maybe 3 months or whatever. So they may churn, but with this solution, they don't.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I have a hard time coming to that on a percentage basis, but I mean, I can list huge numbers of our large clients that would have churned without it, without a doubt. There's no question. Significant numbers would have churned without it, and a lot of upsell would have missed. I mean, and that's a situation where, oh, why don't we expand it to this team? Oh, but then they have an issue. So with a lot of upsell as a result of this as well. So it is extremely material in our business. I haven't kind of gone and try to calculate. To give you a sense of it, I mean, we, I remember some numbers actually, I could kind of look them up, but at any given time we have, and to give it a sense, a team of about 200 engineers, or 210 including PM and engineering and design and ops. So basically our whole product team is like 210, just kind of a scale. We have in the mid-teens active at once on product risks. And they last on average, well, we try to keep them below 90 days. On average, are probably more than 90 days, but we could back into the rate from there to give you a sense of how many there are.
Last question, and then we'll wind
sure,
up the formal
totally,
part.
cool.
We first wanted to thank for covering the B2B topic today because majority of the PM conversations in the Valley seem to be focused on B2C, so props for that. So you covered the kind of you started with the suggestion for the on-prem B2B, right? And then of course most of the focus was for the SaaS B2B.
Correct.
Is there a different suggestion for on-prem moving to SaaS?
Yeah.
Or is that a separate topic?
Well, I mean, I think it's actually a great question. So on-prem moving to SaaS, of which there are a lot, and I'm pleased that I get asked this question quite often about help me do that. Help me kind of make this move. I think that the main point is to adopt the SaaS principles. So I don't think there's any different. I don't think there's any real different fundamental advice, but I will say that the thing that most dramatically holds back that transition is the misalignment on metrics. So I'll give you an example. I won't name a very large company with trying to move SaaS transition, has many businesses, that's a customer of ours, and I was sort of dumbfounded. He said, okay, I'm being held in this large environment to an engineering ratio to revenue. So I basically have a portfolio. This is a big company, right? I have a portfolio. I have 10,000 engineers, and each product gets a certain number of them, and the purport is roughly proportional to the revenue. And this person is desperately trying to move these products to SaaS, and is basically being told that you get the same number of engineers based on the revenue. It's like, this is madness. Like, you don't understand the model. You're using the model of the upfront revenue. So that will kill you, right? So you have to be able to I think it's another reason to articulate the way the business model works. So you come and say, that's not how it goes. What I'm doing is I'm investing for that LTV. So you'll get it. I'm going to do this. What am I going to get out of this? Is my price going to go up? No, I'm going to reduce my churn. And if you can't have that conversation with the business around why the decisions you're making are the right ones, then you're going to be really in trouble. So that's why I would say, if you're in that situation, I would actually advocate the other way. You don't just have a conversation with you go tell the CFO, look, dude, these are the metrics that we're going to be running this business by. And as a product person, that's what I'm working towards. And that's where I think you get into the trouble. And the folks who've done this really well have started out with the metrics up front. This is how it's going to go, and then cascade that through all of their teams, including the product team, as to what it's going to mean for you. And so, if there's one piece of advice, I would say it's that one. And once you have that, then you're free to do the things that you need to do. So, That's what I got.
All right, so we'll conclude the formal Q&A part. We do have our shout-outs, and then Carl will be around for a little bit for any one-on-one questions that you might have. We had to get on Carl's calendar in March or April, but I think it was totally worth it. So thank you, Carl, for finally making it out here.
Thank you.